Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everybody, to Big Blend Radio's Quality of Life show, where we're actually starting a new series on this platform called Life Lessons, because life lessons are good. Sometimes we find out those life lessons just in person, it happens, but sometimes we can actually learn from others, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, so that maybe we don't make those same mistakes. Sometimes we still make them, and that's okay too, because every lesson is a lesson. Every failure, I say failure leads to success, right? Failure is not a bad thing, and to stumble and fall and pick yourself up and then find out that you've learned something, that's a good thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to do it talking about lessons from baby boomers, because the month of August is Boomers Making a Difference month. And today we're recording this on August 17th, which happens to be Baby Boomer Appreciation Day. So I think we're pretty with it right now. So glad to have everybody here. And we have some great guests joining us. So I'm going to introduce them all on, and we're going to talk about that wonderful era of baby boomers that are between the silent generation and then followed by my wonderful group, which is Generation X. I don't know why we get to have the X, but we mark the spot. And maybe we own Twitter then. Who knows? So anyway, let me bring some guests on, and you've probably heard them on our Big Blend radio shows before. Let's start off in South Carolina with travel writer and photographer Jo Clark. You can keep up and follow her at haveglasswilltravel.com. She is on our show every second Sunday with her Jo Goes Everywhere podcast, because she does. And maybe she learned that from a boomer. Who knows? But welcome back, Jo. How are you?
I'm great. And I am a boomer.
You go, girl. Are you a baby boomer or a boomer? Did you go boom when you came into the world? She's like, boom, here I am.
No, I came in nice and quietly at 9:00 on a Saturday night on Valentine's Day. I didn't interrupt dinner.
Good girl. Good girl. Well, I came in, and apparently I disturbed Nancy watching The Exorcist at a drive-in, and she finished The Exorcist, went to the hospital, and when I was born, apparently I was talking when I came out. Go figure. I know you all think that's like unusual, right? Stop laughing, Johnny. It's your turn next. Johnny Schaefer is here. Is an award-winning singer and songwriter, and you can go to hearjohnny.com, not here's Johnny, but hearjohnny.com. Welcome back, Johnny. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So glad to be here and celebrate.
Yes, we got to talk about the baby boomer generation, things that make you go boom, right? No, sorry. I'm just in that mode now. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to have you here back on the show. Johnny is on our Big Daily Blend show as a co-host every first Sunday, and September 1st is the next one, and that is all about back to school. Are you ready for that, Johnny? Like actually talking about back to school and even thinking about being in school. Did you like school?
The different parts of it. I loved high school. Junior high school, I hated. High school, I loved.
Well, I can't wait to talk about it tomorrow. We're going to have fun about that. We also have author and editor Clifford Garstang back on the show. We love Cliff. You go to cliffordgarstang.com. His last book is called The Last Bird of Paradise. You must get it. In fact, go get all his books. It's going to be like the best way to end the rest of the year. Like go read one of his books every month. I'm just saying. So welcome back, Cliff. How are you? I'm
doing great. And that sounds like awesome advice. Thank you very much, Lisa.
I think I learned that from a boomer. What do you think?
Probably.
Nancy was just saying today, she goes, Cliff is like one of the best writers. She loves your writing. And she's just, so she'll be back on a show with you soon. And everybody stand back because, things that make you go boom. She's one of them. She's a firecracker. But she loves your writing. And she's like, everyone needs to read his books, the short story collections and onto the novels as well. So that's a good advice. What do you think? Yeah. It's good.
I think it's awesome advice. Yes.
Yeah. So Cliff, you're getting ready to travel to Dublin like you were talking about on our last happy hour show. Are you getting excited?
I am. I'm making plans, finding out that I am already too late to make reservations for some things, but that's okay. There's lots to do. So, so it's going to be great.
Johnny, you're getting ready to go out that way too this fall, right? To Dublin.
Yes, we'll be there the first 2 weeks of October.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
I'm
you're
sorry, the
all going to
last 2
come
weeks
back and
are like that.
report. Well, what we'll do is we'll set up a
Yeah.
show with the two of you back on so we can have a full report. We need reports. When people travel overseas,
Mhm.
we need to know what are they doing right
Yeah.
compared to us or wrong. Who knows? We want the report. But we also have travel writer and author Lisa Evans back on the show. You can go to writerlisa.com. She also wrote the book about coastal Mississippi. It's like 100 things to do before you die in coastal Mississippi. Well, you don't have to die in coastal Mississippi, but sounds like a good place to do it. But welcome back, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to hear everybody else seems to be as well. That's a
Yeah.
good thing.
How's the weather out in coastal Mississippi?
Hot.
Oh, okay. All
Very,
right.
very, very hot. Heat indexes in like 105, 109 range,
Ooh.
triple digits. Straight up air temp is like high 90s. So yeah, it's August in the South.
And that means you need to go to the beach and also get yourself a drive-through daiquiri, as far as I'm
There you
concerned.
go. There you go.
That's some good advice from a boomer that I just know that someone is saying that to me in my ear. But also we have organizational trainer and author Rita Sever back on the show. She comes on our shows and talks about human resources, workplace stuff that, is so important about leading a good team. And she is awesome. We first met her with her book, Supervision Matters, and now she has another book out, Leading for Justice. And you've got to keep up with her. Go to supervisionmatters.com. So welcome back, Rita. How are you?
Hi, Lisa, and nice to meet everyone else. I'm doing great. I'm out in California, and we're having a warm but not hot day, so everything's good.
And you're by those beautiful redwoods, aren't you?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
in wine country and redwood tree country, so yes.
not bad, not bad. So when we talk about boomer advice, right? Advice from baby boomers, life lessons. I do want to just touch on this before we get into everything with everyone about the workplace, because it's a very interesting era that we're in where baby boomers are having second, third, maybe fourth and fifth careers. And at the same time, we're seeing like, hey, we've got to have some balance in the workplace and respect, right? And respect your elders in the workplace, but then, everybody's different. So we've got like multi generations working in a company. It's just like planning a multi generational family getaway, right? But this is work, so maybe it's not the same. But do you see that a lot in the work that you do, that there's got to be a balance of the age groups to make everyone happy?
I assume you're asking me, right?
Yes, Rita, you're the work
Yes,
person
I'm the
here.
work
Yes.
person in this group. Yes, I see that when there are a variety of ages, that it's like any kind of differences, we get a synergy at its best, where the different perspectives come together and make a sum greater than the parts. Of course, if they don't get along, then as with any other kind of division, it causes problems and concerns. And that actually relates to my little tidbit of advice, if you want me to just dive into it.
Go in. You go, girl.
Okay, so I am a baby boomer, and my advice, I'm going to share a short version of it and then some background to it. So my takeaway here is the old adage of count to 10 before you respond. But the background and the perspective that I bring to it, both at work and in every other part of your life, is the bottom line is to remember that people see the world differently. So part of that is our generation, our gender, our culture, our social class, are we introvert, extrovert, all the many ways we're different. It's important to remember that we see the world differently. And when I do trainings, I actually give people sunglasses that have different colored lenses to really get a sense of this. And so when you remember this, then it is crucial when something happens. The key to remembering this is when you think, that doesn't make any sense. That's a sign that the other person is seeing the world differently than you are. And so I have trained myself when something like that happens to take a step back, take a breath, and remind myself they're seeing the world differently than I am. How do I want to respond? That just takes a few seconds, but it stops you from just reacting from your lens. You know, a boomer might say you're being disrespectful or stop being insubordinate at
Ooh,
work.
I don't like that word. I don't
No,
like that
and
word.
that's going to just make the situation so much worse. So instead, taking that little pause and then coming back. And if you don't have anything else to say, you can say, let me think about that, or I'll get back to you about that. But maybe you'll say, you know, no, that's hard for me to hear, but I want to hear more about it when I'm ready to hear it. Can we schedule time to talk tomorrow?
I love that.
So
Nancy and I have to do that to each other. I love that pause and saying, we're going to get back to this, because you're in that communication, you're letting people know, I hear you want this is important to you, but I want to be able to give you my full attention. And we have to do that because our business is crazy. It's dingbat. I mean, because we're all over. See, that's a generational term, dingbat, right? I feel like Archie Bunker's here any second. But it is. It's like ding, ding, ding. We're here, there, and everywhere, and everything has to be organized. And it's like organized chaos, and it's beautiful and fun. But
and
like she can't come and say, hey, I want to talk to you right now as we're about to air a podcast, right? Can't do that. I want to sit down and, like, if I interrupt her when she's making a video, I could blow her whole concentration and thought pattern of something cool and creative. So it's respect. Yeah.
You know, at work, sometimes there is something clear, like, you know, I think you have an important point that I need to hear, and you can't yell at me at work. So it doesn't mean you just concede everything. You still hold your boundaries, but the pause helps you do it in a responsible way.
I like taking the emotion out of it too, which is hard. I mean, I think everything you've said right now is 100% awesome, but I think it is actually difficult. It's not that easy to do until you start making a habit of it, you know?
Well, the start is taking that pause for sure.
Okay, Rita.
And you're right. You learn as you go along. As you said at the beginning, sometimes you make mistakes and you learn from them. Absolutely.
I love the pause. I like that. You know, it's, yeah, you know, we used to do that as, you know, as a band. We used to say, take a pause for the cause, and here's the tip can. pass the tip jar around. But I think you're really right about that, is taking that breath. In a workplace. I want to go to Cliff on that, because Cliff, I know that you have a legal background, international legal background, working also with the World Bank and travel, and, you know, travel internationally, like you really can't lose it. You can't lose the cool. So do you agree with the pause?
So yeah, I did learn a long time ago, probably after I left my last job, that patience is important in just about everything. And in international travel, being an American, you know, the ugly American abroad is a stereotype for a reason. And it's great just to keep your cool and not react when things are not going the way you want them to. I do have to say that in my work, in the law firm and also in the World Bank, I was not patient. I was just under so much stress. I don't think I managed that process well. So there was conflict from time to time.
Wow.
And I could have used this advice back then.
I can't even imagine you having like any kind of impatience. You're so chill and cool. Like, really? Yeah, but we all have that moment. I totally have a quick, short, like, especially if someone's like, you know, messed with me a few times, and I've given them so much graceway, like, here, you know, I'm letting you know, then I lose my impatience. Like, I lose my patience, I should say, lose it. And that will be that. And once it's out, it's out. And I need to go back to Rita's advice. I like that, because everyone learns at a different speed and time, right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean there won't be conflict or you don't get angry. But again, just the pause helps you express that anger, maybe with an I statement instead of just yelling at them.
Well, let's take this musically because Johnny, having the pause is part of dynamics to a song, right? If you don't take those pauses for your breath or for that song, because even just in listening, you need the pause. You need to have a
Oh
pause in
yeah,
music.
the silence is as important as the notes because it's part of the phrasing and it it creates breaks and everything has to breathe, including music. And so there's always that ebb and flow. And yeah, I just piggybacking off of what Rita said, I think that when I was in the workplace, there were so many different kinds of people, and it always frustrated me when the people in charge expected everyone to think the way they did, and they had bosses that loved diversity and loved different kinds of perspectives and seemed to be very much at ease with different kinds of personalities, and others that were so rigid that they just shut it down if someone didn't think like they could. And those were very stressful work environments for me. So I appreciate, what you're saying.
And when you shut it down fast, you actually lose creativity. And that's what, as a leader wants to have people that think differently. You should always want to talk to people that think differently than yourself. That's how you broaden your mind. On taking a pause, I'm going to go to Lisa Evans here because of coastal Mississippi. I'm just going to say, she's going to say, come to the beach, y'all, and go to a blues bar, right? Lisa, well, that's a way to take a pause. Go for a vacation.
That is definitely a way to take a pause, but I have to say, Rita is, I'm sitting here, muted, nodding my head. Everything she said makes so much sense. I know, Lisa, you know this. I am a travel writer and an author, but I still, because I'm not quite I'm on the cusp of that whole baby boomer thing. I'm not quite to the retirement age yet, but, so I still have a day job. And in that day job in my department, I have two young girls, and it's some days very, very, very difficult. I love the pause thing. I'm gonna have to, I do implement it to a point, but, it's generational so much. And it kind of rolls into one of the things that I was going to say. And I assume there's other people on this call that, the work ethic today of, I'll call them kids, is entirely different from what I grew up in and what was instilled in my head. So that's kind of one of my, my lessons were kind of all rolled in and around the whole stay in your lane, stay focused on what you do best and let others do what they do best, if that makes sense. But, you never know who you're going to run into down the line. There's been many, many instances in my life that, I meet someone and, either I was young and idiotic and was not necessarily very nice to them. And then 5 years later down the road, here they are, and surprise, you need them for something and they're still remembering that you might not have been very nice to them. Ooh. So but everything that Rita said is just so, so true in the workplace with generational and having to, you have to take a step back and say, okay, and realize that not everybody does the things the way you do them and have been taught to do them. The generations after me were not taught the same kind of, I don't know, ethics, I guess is what I'll say.
It's a shift in ways of life too. Nancy and I've been talking about this, especially, I wish she was on the show today, and we're just on crazy deadlines right now. And, we were talking about how it's shifted now that we have AI. So even there's new careers being created every day in ways that we're going like, what the heck? How's that? Like, what's that? Like this term didn't even exist when I was growing up, so it's a very interesting time. And so I think Rita's pause part is really crucial. I want to go to Joe on this too, because she also is a teacher. But before
Oh,
I go
yeah.
there, when you talked about you never know who you're going to meet on the other side at some time, right, in life, not on the death side again, but
No, but
no. But I wanted to tell you this fun story because Nancy would tell you if she was on the show. So she had this important meeting to get to, and it was when she had her magazine in South Africa, and she was stuck in traffic, and then she had to haul, right? And there was this guy that was really annoying her, like a driver, and she eventually flipped him the bird, right? You guys all know Nancy, right? You know she would do this. And she got so mad at him, and she's like, "Oh yeah, well," and that's you don't do it nowadays. You could get shot, right? And this was
well,
in
that's
South
true.
Africa, and you could still get shot then. She gives this guy the bird, and then finds out they were both racing to the same meeting, and that is the person she was to sell advertising to. So there you
Oh,
Oh
go.
yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, you just gotta. I mean, I've learned, and y'all know I'm from New York originally, so
No,
down
we
here in
can't
the
tell.
down here in the South, I've had to learn very much that pause in my responses to certain things and how, and that's on everyday life, whether I'm writing, whether I'm at my day job, it doesn't really matter, but you really have to stop and think because the South, you can say all you want, but it definitely is a different culture than the Northeast. So things that I could get away with saying or doing in the Northeast are not at all acceptable in the South. So culturally speaking, that takes a big, you have to keep that in mind as well.
Mm. That's the thing. Yeah, if just we have to be present in the moment. I think that's the big lesson of it all. But going to Joe, you're a teacher, so now you know why she is, have glass will travel. I give a hats off to all teachers, and I think everyone on this podcast is a teacher in a way, right? So, and Rita is, Cliff, you are through your books, through everything you do. Johnny, you are, because when we do these podcasts, we are in some way just sharing our perspectives so that hopefully others learn from them, right? So, Joe, teacher Joe, is that why you like wine so much? That's the real question.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm. It's a way to take a pause, isn't it?
It is.
Mm.
Yes, I definitely, every night. I always said grades improved with wine.
That's it. That's it. But as a teacher, did you have to take a pause and keep reactions under,
Yeah,
until
because
later?
You can't throw things and you can't
You
hit
can't
them.
do the bird. You can't flip the bird.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you had to
Mm.
kind of keep things under control, but yeah, and again, everybody's mentioning work ethics. Baby boomers, we had work ethics, we had role models, and in school, I would have different types of principals. Every few years, the principal would change, and the ones that I loved the most were the ones that they set expectations and then they left you alone. They knew
Mm.
you knew what you were supposed to be doing and you would do it. I didn't need somebody looking over my shoulder. I didn't care if they walked. People would get all upset because the principal or somebody from the school district would come and open their door and walk in and stand in the back of their classroom for 10 or 15 minutes. And they'd say, I didn't know what to do. I tried to think of what I should be talking about while they were in there. And I go, I just ignore them. I've got a class to teach and I just keep on teaching. I'm doing my job to the best of my ability. And they either see it or they don't. I'm not going to change what I'm doing because my principal walked in.
Yeah, because you have to be who you are too, right?
Yeah.
And if you're, that's not good leadership. Wouldn't you say, Rita, you are the person who says like, there's a transparency in work, right? Of being a leader. And then if you're leading by fear, you're not going to okay, I don't want to get into politics. I'll behave. That was such a good lead in there. I couldn't help it. But leadership by fear is terrible. You don't get anything done.
It may get short-term results, but it's not going to get long-term satisfactory results.
Right. And you're not in there to perform. It's not a dog and pony show. You're not just putting on a performance for those 10 minutes when somebody walked in to observe. You should have been doing the right thing and saying the right things and teaching your class all along. It shouldn't matter when they walk in. And that was always my attitude.
I want to say that at the end of this podcast, this panel discussion, we have a clip coming up with Jeff Nelligan, who's a parenting author, and you're going to hear from him. But we love having him be part of our Big Blend Radio, expert family here, because he talks about parenting of the boomer generation through to now, and he is of the same ilk of what you're saying of being a teacher, like, hey, this is what your expertise is. And Lisa, what you were saying too, this is my lane. I keep trying to tell all the truckers, like, this is my highway, but apparently it's not working when I drive. But it's, in other words, he talks about when you overparent to the point of your kid cannot actually become themselves. It's like there's that term, the helicopter parent, helicopter mom, and all of that. I'm not trying to point fingers and all that stuff, but you do need to go out in the world on your own and discover who you are so you can be strong at it. And you do need to fall down. And so I know he'll be talking at the end, but I think that goes the same in careers, right? It's like, ooh, and you can still learn new things and you can jump in other lanes too, but it's how you do it, right? And it should be that you learn from each other. When you have good people with different ideas, that's how things get created and new stuff happens. So it's an interesting conversation, this, but yeah, you should be able to be left alone to do what you do well. There's a level of trust because, right, Joe, if you don't do your job, you're going to get fired, period. That's it.
Yep. That's the way I always looked at it.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because nowadays, apparently, there's a huge rate of parents taking their kids to the job interview and sitting in on the job interview. Like, that would not have happened with me at all.
No.
Are you kidding me?
That's just hilarious. That's hilarious to even picture it.
Well, no, I could tell stories on that, but yeah, that happened with Nancy in South Africa. No, she fired one guy, and then the mom came and yelled at Nancy for firing her son. Like, son didn't do any work. He didn't do his. No.
That's insane.
Well, that's why you have a door, and then you say, "Go fetch," and close the door. No, that was bad. But that's an interesting. I think my generation. I think I'm Generation X. I don't know, whatever it is. I'm not good at this. Who's a millennial? Who's this and all of that? I think we're like in this interesting stage. So it was just kind of younger than me where it started to get wonky. And I don't know what happened in regards to like your parents doing everything for you. And I think we were the latchkey kids where you had to teach yourself, but there was that level of, you've been taught right from wrong. And when you did something wrong, you did it. And if you get caught, what's going to happen. So that was kind of how I was raised. And it's just different now, I think. And yet at the same time, kids are born with a phone in their hands. So it's a little, I don't know what the life lessons are of today. Wow. I don't know. But Rita, that's a good balance. And I think you give us pause. And I want to go over back to Joe. What is your life lesson?
I thought about this all week. What am I going to say?
What kind of wine am I going to refer you all to?
A good wine. That's one of my life lessons. I put down, never stop learning, never stop moving. You've got to walk. You've got to do yoga. You've got to do breathing exercise. You've got to keep moving. And life is short, believe it or not. I mean, here we are, us baby boomers. Do you look in the mirror every morning and think, who is that? I don't even recognize that face. Life is short. So take the trip, drink the good wine, use the good dishes, and eat dessert first.
Eat the cake.
Yeah. And if the meal is bad, eat 2 desserts. Don't even eat the meal.
So I'm okay that I had breakfast. Yesterday's breakfast was pizza.
Yeah, it's fine. And say, I love you every chance you get.
Very nice.
Love it.
Yeah. Life is short.
That's awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome. That's awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome.
I love that. I love that. You got to write it down. You should like put in like a poem kind of like that's, I love that you do yoga on the beach, by the way. I talk about you every time I do a podcast with Dr. Jackie. Every second Wednesday, she does heart health. And especially for women, because it's the number one killer of women and men, by the way,
Yep.
above cancer, right?
Yep.
So she talks about it. And with women, it's so hard because as she says, we present differently. And I'm like, what do you mean present? Are we going to do a show? Like, here, I've got a heart attack. You know, she's like, no, we just have different symptoms of, and it's very difficult to see when a woman is having a heart attack. And it's so misleading. You could like, oh, I'm going to go throw up. Oh, that means you're having a heart attack? No. Oh, you know, it's just very interesting. And anyway, so we always talk about wellness tips, and no matter what, every single time I'm like, well, I got this friend Jo. She goes to Myrtle Beach and she sits on the beach and does yoga every morning, and she's the happiest person I know. And at the end of the day, she does have her wine. Now, I'm not going to say if it's the one glass or the two, but she does have her wine and she's happy as heck. So,
and the days I don't do yoga, I'm now walking 3.5 miles on the beach. So every other day I'm either walking or I'm doing yoga every day. And it helps with mental sanity. Of course, being retired also helps with mental sanity.
Walking is one of the best things. We have a hashtag 1 hour walk group on Facebook, and I need to get back in it. Like right now, my walking is with a greyhound. You do not want the greyhound to go loose. You will be running, and you can't do that. You can't do it. Walking dogs is one of the best things on the planet, and they show you things that you didn't even know existed. That would be one of my biggest lessons is walking. One of our good friends, he's since passed, Jim Ostick. He was a retired earth science teacher, and he was one of the most inspiring people I've ever met or known in my life. And we only knew him for, a few years. And he inspired so many of his students. He went out and he cycled the perimeter of the country in his 60s. Mid-60s,
wow,
going to 70s.
Cool.
He walked across the country from Lewes Beach, Delaware, and I know I'm not saying that right, all the way to Point Reyes, I'm saying that correctly, in California, loosely following the American Discovery Trail. And he's hiked the entire Pacific Crest Trail, majority of the portion of the Appalachian Trail. He's written about it. He's written about quality of life for parks, and I encourage people to go look him up. Just Jim Ostick, I know he's passed, but his life lessons from observing nature and being out there, and not to put the number of years as a negative. I couldn't believe it. He died so young and healthy. I'm like, I am having that second glass of wine. If he was healthy and young, and then right after he died, another good friend died and he was healthy and young, I'm like, that's it. I'm having my second glass of wine, and I am. That's
Don't
it.
put it off.
I'm not. And I'm not over drinking, but I will have that second glass of wine. I will. But they lived. And so those are the people that, they say the good die young, but I really hate that term. They really had this way of life, and it was total quality, and also to push yourself beyond. And I think that's what Jim left us, was this lesson of don't listen to what people say, either if it's good or bad. Everybody listen to this podcast. Okay. Don't unsubscribe, subscribe, listen, but don't listen to naysayers. Use that as a challenge. Be smart about it. Take healthy risks, but push yourself beyond that extra step. I mean, to walk across the country at his age in the heat.
Yeah, amazing.
Across the desert. And what he found was he had more trail angels than you'd ever think. We look at the country and the world being divided and all these arguments and everything. But when you travel, like everybody on this show travels, right? You will find more people are there to help than actually hurt. And that's what he found, no matter what he did. It is pretty beautiful. And to just push yourself that extra step when you think, oh, I can't do it anymore. Take one more step and see if you can. Always go that extra step. That extra step is the difference between going home or going on the great adventure. and seeing how far you can go as a human being. It's really cool. That's a big lesson. So, Cliff, what's your lesson?
Well, first, let me react to Joe's, because walking is a tip that I use for writers. Whenever I get stuck on something, if I'm having a problem in the fiction that I'm writing, one of the great ways to loosen up my creativity is to get outside and take a walk. And inevitably, something breaks loose, and I come back and I've solved the problem. So I love that advice. And likewise, the never stop learning is something that I take to heart. In fact, I've gone back to school several times, which is kind of amusing to people. But also, I study languages, and it just keeps me learning and interested in getting up in the morning. But my big advice is not to be afraid of change. So I've managed to startle people several times when making a big change. When I was young, I was in graduate school and pretty suddenly joined the Peace Corps and ran off to South Korea to teach English. And people were, especially my father, people were shocked by that huge upheaval. But it was an important change for me. It gave me a different perspective on what I was doing and what the world was like. So that was my first big change. But then I was working in a law firm. I was a partner in a law firm, and I was really interested in a shift in my career. So I quit my job and I went back to graduate school to retool to work in a different area, international development, still in law. But when I left my law firm, people were pretty shocked by that. And then huge shock when I left the World Bank to start writing fiction. That one really gave people pause, because there's a lot of difference between the money I was making at the World Bank and the money I'm not making as a fiction writer. So that's really a lesson that I think is important to learn, not to be afraid of change. And it's really interesting. I was having a conversation recently with a professor at my alma mater, Northwestern University, and he is teaching a class to these undergraduates in the university about planning for big changes, not to expect to have one career your entire life, but to think about the flexibility that change gives you, so that you're not going to get stuck necessarily being an engineer or a lawyer or something. You can change if you want to. So I think it's great that young people can think that way, because I don't think when I was in college we did. I think we expected to have a career that would last forever.
Yeah, you're going to be at the company store.
Right.
From day one till the end, right? And it's like, and then that's the thing in history, the company store always sells you out. I mean, I've gone through all the towns, the company store towns. There are towns that are completely gone, and it's part of the history. It's like, it's always the industries of extraction that, hey, yeah, we're here, we're gonna invest in your schools while we do this, and we're gonna do all this and make it all look good while we're destroying your area. You know what I mean? There's this balance of it's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. And so people had that mindset of, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be the best at it, and I'm gonna stay, and their loyalty went into a company so strong, and then it flipped on them so many times in our history. And that's something to look at, to always be around change. It's I feel like our resumes should be about us and our life, not oh, I did this, I did that. Yes, it's all part of it. But even if you're in a happy career, who are you that's who it should be. It's like who you are as a person. Are you there waiting, ready for change? That kind of thing, not just here's all the accolades, right? It should be who you are as an individual. Are you able to, get along with different people? Are you able to do these certain things? That should be part of it. And you are not the company that you work for. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting when we think about that. Cliff, I wanted to ask you, do you know of Julia Cameron? She wrote the book, The Artist's Way.
Absolutely, yeah. And another one that followed that one. Sure.
Yeah, she was on our show back in 2017. Wow, August 21st. Hey, this is kind of trippy. And her book is called Life Lessons, 125 Prayers and Meditations. It was really cool interviewing her. Of course, she got huge, notoriety for The Artist's Way for everybody in the creative world. But she talked about the power of walking. And I think that's when we were I think we were into the walking group or started it after that. And she talked about the power of writing and walking first thing in the morning. Those two things must happen early. As soon as you open your eyes, that's when everything comes. And she was really strong about that, about walking first thing and writing first thing. And I remember asking her what comes first, and she answered, and I have no clue. I can't remember. But she did discuss that on that podcast. So everyone, I will link that in the episode notes because I think it goes really a lot with what we're talking about today. So let's go to you, Johnny. What is your life lesson? And anybody have any comments? Hold on one second. Anybody have comments for Cliff on that or questions? Okay.
Well, I was actually going to talk about what he said.
Okay.
What I love about this conversation is that this week when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, everyone has touched on things that came to mind through this whole, through each person so far that's talked. And with Cliff, when you were talking about, taking a walk when you're stuck, I heard an interview on NPR years ago, and I wish I need to look up what the book was, but it was an author who interviewed a bunch of Pulitzer and or Nobel Prize winning scientists and all different kinds of people, and asked them questions about their process and what it was that led them to their big moment of discovery. And almost all of them said, well, it was when I was playing catch with my kid or when I was running on the beach, and so it is very consistent that when they had their breakthrough, they weren't sitting at a desk trying to work things through, that it came doing other things. And so that was very interesting to me that you brought that up, because that was one of the things that I had thought about. And then on the whole theme of education, the 5 most influential boomers in my life were high school teachers of mine. And interestingly, I'm friends with all of them on Facebook now after 45 years.
Wow.
And many of my fellow students are as well. And we all talk about what an influence they had. My band director, my choir director, so many phenomenal musicians came out of my high school, Menachie High School in Porterville, California. And many have gone on to be music educators themselves. Many of us have gone on to become professional musicians. And then also to Cliff's note about, changing careers, my perception of my life is that I took a detour for 30 years. I always wanted to be a singer-songwriter since I was 4 years old, but I felt like I was supposed to do, everyone says we need to have something to fall back on. And so I kind of fell back, and I committed myself to the corporate world and played that game and worked 14-hour days. And in the end, they did not appreciate it. And I missed out on so many wonderful moments with family because I was working and doing something that I didn't hate, but I didn't really love it like I do music. And then in the end, I got pushed aside in a corporate, when a new CEO came in, he got rid of all the executive team. And so then I just said, you know what, I'm going to do the music that I always wanted to do my whole life. And so I threw myself into it. And, education doesn't stop when you graduate. Hopefully your teachers give you tools to continue to educate yourself and to stay engaged and keep learning. And every day I learn something. My husband is wonderful at learning and teaching himself. He taught himself how to be a video editor, and he's incredible at it. And he did it through watching tutorials on YouTube. So the importance of education. So everyone, collectively, I guess, these are all things, that I learned from boomers. I guess I'm on the cusp. I was born in the end of 61. So right, before it switches over to Generation X. But I would say that I learned a passion for life and a passion for learning.
That's cool. That is cool. And that's what I love about doing podcasts. I learn from all of you every single day. I'm in permanent college. It's awesome. And then combined with travel, you're always learning. And it's like, I don't know, but I won't talk about how I'm starting to get wrinkles anyway. Like, doesn't matter how much you learn, you still get those. And your hair changes color and whatever. And then you go, who cares? That's really, when you learn so much, you really just don't care. I don't care. I want to go back to Lisa. Your life lesson, I know you touched on it when we were talking with Rita, but you want to touch on some more?
Yeah, basically, I'm loving listening to all of these different viewpoints because, as you said, it's all kind of one great big theme and people have repeated themselves. But I just jotted down a few things. Of course, I touched on a little bit. One thing that is always be on time. I don't care whether you're going to the grocery store or whether you're going to your job or whatever. You have to be on time. In my head, if you're on time, you're late actually, but that's just me. And you just got to keep going. You just got to keep going regardless of what you've been through. Whatever hardships, whatever, and don't compare yourself to somebody else. You are who you are. And it took me a very, very long time to reach that. You know what? I don't care anymore. I am who I am. And, I don't want to be compared to somebody else because I'm not that person, nor will I ever be, or vice versa. I think comparing yourselves is just the biggest, I don't know, it's just one of the most horrible thing you can do for yourself because there's no two people that are ever alike. And I just actually, it's funny, a little bit ago, I just saw something on Facebook. I have these memes and it just kind of fits in. I'm just gonna, it said, I'm proud of the woman I am today because I went through one hell of a time becoming her. You go through so much in your life, and especially as you get older. And it's funny, I can look at these, younger people and go, oh yeah, honey, been there, done that. But, some of them want to learn and others, and then they want to fumble on their own. So, and I think everybody has to learn on their own. Like somebody else said earlier, you can't teach them to be like little robots. So.
No, that's what AI is for. There's robot school too. And you can go and check yourself into some hotels. Like there's one in Silicon Valley. I think it's the A1 hotel, and a robot will bring you your cocktail. I don't know. It's fun, but like I want someone to talk to when I have a cocktail and say thank you and, laugh or something.
And learn. You can learn from that nice little cocktail waitress and whatever. Whoever she is. It's so interesting to me. That's one of the things I love when I travel and when I'm writing about it is to meet people. And I've met some incredible people through my travels. One of my trips last year, I went to Canada and I was scheduled on a tour with a First Nations representative, and it was just fabulous. And his story is just wild, but it was so enthralling to sit and listen to him and just learn. Cause, I would never have, from, again, going back to the culture thing, I love listening to and learning about other people's cultures. I think that is, you can sit back and say, hey, why do they do that? But then if you sit and listen to them, they'll explain it. And it's really kind of cool.
I agree. That's travel. And you'll find out that you are connected in some way. We're all connected. right? We all are. I mean,
Exactly.
we're connected to trees too. Trees have human DNA and we have tree DNA in us. I know it's tiny, but I always think that's important. I'm just saying, Rita's next to redwood trees, so she knows. She gets to hug redwoods, don't you, Rita?
It's
Like,
true. I walk among the redwoods every day and
do you really?
befriend them.
Oh,
Yes.
no
Now
wonder you're
that
so
would be
cool.
cool.
That
Yeah.
is cool. And then Cliff, you've got trees out in your area, don't you? You
I
got good
do.
trees.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
of which fell down in the recent hurricane. So
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, it's
Oh,
a mess.
well, you're okay though. You're safe.
Yeah,
Good. Good. I mean, the last few hurricane things, like, I'm just going to say, y'all, climate change is real. We do have to make some changes. I'm just going to say it. It is. It is. And please go read the book by David Lipsky, The Parrot and the Igloo. Everyone should read that book. I'm just saying, everyone
No,
should read
you're
that book.
100% right. Climate change is very real, and if people can't see that with what's happening around them, then they have blinders on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good lesson right there. Take the blinders off. Really. And that's the hard thing is sometimes actually, getting, don't let other people cloud your vision. Rita, you talked about wearing different glasses, right? Like rose-colored glasses, sunglasses, wearing different glasses so you can understand where people come from. I interviewed a musician recently. His name is T-Bear. He tours with Walter Trout, just amazing musician. So check out T-Bear, Bear. And he was like the manager, working crew for Carly Simon and all kinds of people. I mean, his music history is insane, but he kind of disappeared for a couple decades to clean up, basically. Let's just put it back in the day, addiction was easy in and drugs and alcohol and everything for the music industry was pretty prevalent, and a lot of good people got trapped into that. But he is an incredible musician, an incredible songwriter. And during the interview, he talked about one of his songs was about this guy, and I wish I would know. And Cliff is probably one person who knows what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to say it right, so he probably won't. But he was talking about this writer who talked about, and I think it became a movie or something, but every time you wear a different pair of glasses, you see a different story. And it was a way of storytelling. Like put these glasses on and you'll get a new story. So it kind of really prompted, and Rita, when you talked about it, it was like, that was so, I went right to that. What he taught me, it was like, wow, it's so easy to change up the story, change the narrative. You can do that yourself. And Cliff, you were talking about the power of change. It is that, because that is inevitable. That is the one thing we are all guaranteed in life. Change happens, period. But the idea of these sunglasses gave you a different story. Like you could just pick a different, the guy would go to an antique store and buy people's sunglasses so that he could see different stories. It's pretty cool. I wish I knew I have to go back and find it because Cliff, I know you're going to know. I'm just not telling it right. I'm not a good storyteller on that level. But how cool is that? Go to an antique store and buy up glasses to see if you get a new story. And you're in it.
It's a great idea.
I like it.
Yeah. And I think it's just as important to understand what our story is. So it's both parts.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved all the stories that everyone told today.
I love that too.
What you see. It's been great.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I have one thing before you go. We always like, end endings that are happy, right? I have to be careful how I say that too. So each of you, if we look as we move forward, right, in the future here, and you look at your life right now, okay, and think about the next 5 years, which anything could change, right? Anything can happen. But in the next 5 years, give me one word about the next 5 years. It could just be a feeling that you have right now, but it's a quick word. So let's start with you, Cliff. What is a word?
book.
Well done. And go to cliffordgarstang.com for them. There it is. What about you, Lisa?
Travel.
Joe?
Wine.
I knew it. Are you kidding me?
Well, I would have said travel, but Lisa just said travel. So you know.
Sorry.
I'm gonna bring glasses like sunglasses to the next meeting here. Johnny, what about you?
Love.
Very good. Rita?
Connection.
Lovely. I love it. I love it. Mine is happy. Just happy. Be happy. Yeah,
Now
that's
put
what we're
all
here
those
for.
words together in a sentence and put that'll be the tagline.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Love it.
Now I feel like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I have no idea why, but I do. All right, a really good one. A really good one. Thank you all so much, everyone. Again, the links are always in the episode notes from everyone who's on the show, every show we do. But I want you to know, go to haveglasswilltravel.com. If you want wine and travel, that's where to go. If you want to hear good music, go to hearjohnny.com. Read good books, go to cliffordgarstang.com. If you want to go around the world too and read good stories and even get a book and go to coastal Mississippi, go to writerlisa.com. And if you want to get better in your workplace as a leader or just even as an employee, right? Not just, I didn't mean it that way, but really, no matter where you are in your workplace career, go to supervisionmatters.com. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good to meet all of you.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So in keeping up with our life lessons from baby boomers, we have Jeff Nelligan here. Jeff is an author and he's got quite a resume. So go to his website, nelliganbooks.com. He was on our show about a month and a half ago talking about his book, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, How You Can Raise Resilient Kids. So Jeff, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Lisa, it's great to be back. And boy, what a great topic you guys have happened upon here.
Well, I think it's Baby Boomers Month or Baby Boomers Appreciation Month. August is. And so before we end the month, we thought we better skid in here with some good lessons. And our panel discussion was really fascinating, going into just some real values that sometimes I think we may lose, and also talking about the value of change. So what is your lesson when it comes to life lessons from the boomers?
So, the whole idea of looking at boomers, it's such a great one. There are so many of us, it was the largest generation up to that time, 76 million individuals in that generation, 46 to 1964, now only exceeded by Gen Z at around 79 million. But what I think the biggest takeaways as I look around at all my peers and colleagues in that age group is that most of them, in terms of the ones that I was around, just had this propensity to grind it out, whatever they were doing. And this goes from when I was in elementary school and junior high and high school, all the way through now, let's say 40 years later, 45 years later in the workforce. The individuals I was around, men and women, just had this incredible ability to grind through things, to get over obstacles and setbacks, sometimes large, sometimes small. And that is, one of the results of that, of course, is we're the wealthiest generation ever in the history of mankind in terms of, asset value, property and incomes, and holdings. So if I look at the one lesson is just that determination and discipline in not all, but most of the hundreds, maybe thousands of boomers that I know from an early age to today. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson that I can draw from it.
I think, you're really right. It's kind of like get on with it, and maybe not panic too when situations arise. It's like, okay, problem solve and go to the next hurdle. And I think there was an understanding that you're going to fall down. And I think that sometimes we forget that now in today's world, that failure is part of success. It really is. And stumbling is not a bad thing. It sucks at the time, and you're allowed to say, well, this sucks, but you are, right?
Yeah.
But then you've got to kind of move on. And I think that's something, what I've learned too, is that I think it goes to that topic we talked about when you first came on the show, is resiliency. And that's about keep going. When you talk about grind it out, it's keep going, right?
Correct. And, resiliency is a great word. And when we spoke earlier, I talked about the fact that kids and adults, no one gets a free ride. Everyone hits a setback and an obstacle that they have to get over or get around and then move on. I also think that sense of resiliency was learned from our parents. Our parents were the greatest generation, truly.
Mm-hmm.
And, myself, like every colleague, everybody that I knew from elementary school on, our dads had served in World War II. And prior to that, they'd been in the Great Depression. And my own father, was 15 years old working in a vanadium mine, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. That was his summer job, a mile below the surface of the earth. And then when he turned 17 and a half, he was drafted and went into the Navy. And then at age 18 participated in the invasion of Okinawa, and then had to come home in 1946, not having seen his family for nearly 2 years, to take care of his father. So we learned firsthand how tough our parents had it. And my mom's story is very much the same. So I guess that example of strength was part of our own lifetimes growing up. And maybe that contributes, as you noted earlier, to that resiliency.
And your dad fighting in Okinawa is the bloodiest battle, man. That was a hardcore battle. We just did a podcast on it, and I was like, wow. And people forget that battle too. It's kind of like the Korean War is also kind of forgotten, I think, sometimes in when we talk about wars and battles, they just kind of get swept under the rug, but they were hardcore, man. Your dad survived that.
Okinawa was 12,000 American dead. Now, can
Incredible.
you imagine that? Can you imagine that figure today?
Yeah.
But that's what it took. So if your father has been through something like that, and prior the Great Depression, then you're learning from a man who's just about seen it all.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Most, if not all, of my friends growing up, male and female, had fathers who had done that same thing and moms who had lived through Great Depression. So you get that inner strength by looking at the model that your parents have provided.
It's interesting too, because through the boomer generation, there's a lot of changes that also came about. And you also think, here's this military side, right? And then you've got the hippie side, and then all the hippies went to communes, and then all the communes closed down, and they went and made a bunch of money at IBM and all kinds of other places, right? Well, come on, it's kind of true, right? And so there's all these changes too, social changes. The culture changed, pop culture. Like, gosh, I mean, look what was going on with music, and so all these different belief systems were invading at that time. And so there was a lot of experimentation in all kinds of things, not just drugs, but, there was a lot of different new ideas. And it's just an era of change, I think, that, you've got to think about what boomers have also seen over the years. I mean, back in the day, remember phones that you had to actually turn to make the numbers, go around. And now we're walking around with, Google on a phone. I mean, it's kind of crazy. People going up to the moon. I mean, before that, and now look what's going on. We're looking at space tourism. So, when you think about that to now, it's pretty epic. And it's like, wow. And that just proves the world is never going to stop changing. So it's up to us. There's another lesson of, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to change with it, or it'll change you for you.
The technological advances that you just pointed out so well. 1969, we land on the moon, and they're doing most of the engineers at the time. And I grew up in Los Angeles, which was a huge aerospace area. Most of the engineers are working with slide rules. And now, as you perfectly know, we walk around with a supercomputer in our pockets, and we start to whine when we're only getting, 3G instead of 5G. So that technological change has really, brought a new perspective on what we think is, a serious problem versus what people put up with, let's say, even 35 years ago. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And I think I'm so glad we're doing this show because I think it's lessons that right now we have to kind of go back to. Some lessons are the life and the world may change, but some lessons and some basic, values of character and how we handle things. Those things, you could have a different circumstance, but it's how you're handling yourself. Those things don't have to change. You know what I mean?
Right.
Unless you're improving, right? We want you to improve. We all want to improve, right? But you know what I mean? There's just, whether it's World War III, another depression. I mean, we've been, hanging on to the way the economy is like, let's hang on to strings, everybody, and swing around and hope we keep going. So it's good to look in history too, of how people were resilient through such devastating and hard times,
Right.
because hard times will always come around.
Right. But our hard times today are nothing. During the Depression, you had families that, majority of families in the United States that more than 50% of their daily intake was bread.
Yep.
And today, you can look at the bottom 20% of the population, and perhaps let's say 11% of people are in poverty, but take that 20%, they have a higher standard of living than the average citizen in Europe, from everything from having air conditioning and a car to the living space being triple in the United States for the bottom 20% than it is for the average person in Europe. So, our sense of what is really a catastrophe is just kind of eroded over the years. And with that great wealth that I discussed earlier that the boomers have accumulated has come real complacency. And then again, that immediate automatic reversion to complaining about things like the 5G is too slow, rather than 60% of my diet is bread.
Yeah, really. It's such a big deal. Good stuff. Jeff, always good to have you on the show. I'm excited because we're going to be doing more with you. Everyone, NelliganBooks.com is the website to go to. He's even got political books in there because Jeff knows about politics. Isn't this a fun time to be alive this year?
It certainly is.
It's interesting, that's for sure. So everyone, again, go get 4 lessons from my 3 sons, how you can raise resilient kids. Check that out again by Jeff Nelligan. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Hey, thank you for having me, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.